everyone. I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, and June is Pride Month. And although we cannot come together for our usual celebrations, it is important that we take the time and we recognize this time of the year and celebrate our LGBTQ community members. So I'm really honored to be here today with these amazing guests to have a conversation for Pride Month. Here today, we have Carolyn Weisinger, the board president of SF Pride, Amy Pannu, the executive director of Livermore Pride, right here in the district, and Kiku Johnson, the executive director of the Rainbow Community Center. We really wanted to take the time to recognize Pride and hope this information is helpful to our community members to learn more about the history of Pride and also the resources that are out there right now when things might be hard, especially for our LGBTQ youth. So this week, we need to take a moment and celebrate the landmark Supreme Court decision that came down earlier this week in a 6-3 decision, and let's recognize that 6-3 majority. The court decided that the LGBTQ community cannot be discriminated against in the workplace because of their gender identity or sexual orientation. Now, I also want to recognize we shouldn't be having this conversation, but we are, and the protections have come down. So I am just so grateful that in this moment in time, we have a little bit of good news to celebrate, and it is absolutely that. It's a huge victory, and knowing that one has those protections in the workplace has to bring hopefully some comfort to our LGBTQ community members. I have been at this fight in the legal system for most of my career, having run the pro bono program at my law firm and worked on the Prop 8 cases, which was one of the highlights of my legal career. And just to continue to see those victories come down has been such an amazing moment. I actually had the privilege, this is an aside, but I had the privilege of officiating at my sister's wedding when it was legalized in San Francisco, and watching her get legally recognized by the state was such a beautiful moment. And to think how far we continue to come from those days is just so amazing. So, and I also want to recognize all of our city councils. Every single one now in District 16 has recognized LGBTQ History Month by raising a flag or through a proclamation. And I want to thank all of them and our community members who have really fought for those proclamations, because that recognition means so much to, I know especially I've heard from youth in our community who see that flag flying, and it means to them that they are accepted in a way that they sometimes aren't sure about. So thank you to all of our city council members for your support on that, and to our community members for fighting that fight. And I've been proud to be alongside you for that and to support it along the way. I want you all to know that we continue to work at the state level to make sure that there is equity for LGBTQ members of our community. Last year, I co-authored AB 493 with my wonderful colleague, Assemblymember Gloria, which was the Safe and Supportive Schools Act, which would require each school to provide training to teachers and provide resources to support LGBTQ students. And we know our schools are critical in making sure that our students feel accepted and understood, and that is really something that our teachers need help understanding, and we want to provide them that support. We did ACR 99 last year. Assemblymember Lowe led that effort, which was a resolution that declared the harmfulness of conversion therapy, because I want it to be clear that we as a legislature and a state do not believe that LGBTQ identity is something that can or needs to be changed. And so we wanted to send that message loud and clear with that resolution. We also had AB 711, which I was happy to support, which required schools to update student records if it received documentation that there was a gender or name change, making sure that as our students transition, that our schools recognize their identity as they see it. So a little bit of the work we're doing, but I'm so excited to be here to talk with our community members about the work we're doing throughout our community. So let's get into that conversation. So Carolyn, I'm going to turn it over to you first. This is the 50th anniversary of Pride Month. What a milestone, and to not be able to have our huge parades on this 50th anniversary is so sad. But can you talk a little bit about the origins of the LGBTQ rights movement and Pride itself?
It's very interesting to be having these conversations with community during this and very important moment. After the demonstrations around the murder of George Floyd 2 weeks ago, I woke up on that following Monday with so many people asking me, are you guys going to postpone Pride? We would literally get demand emails. We need to cancel Pride. We need to be focusing on Black people right now. And I'm like, stop right there. Pride, Stonewall started with a brick being thrown by a Black trans woman. And what a lot of people further don't know was that when she threw that brick, she was throwing it in defense of a Black butch woman. So Stonewall was always a defense of Black bodies. So this fight for the liberation of Black people and people of color is directly interwoven. Pride is just another extension of that, essentially. Over the last 50 years, we have had these conversations about not necessarily having the best visibility of our Black, trans, and queer community. And I'm glad to be in the forefront of this fight right now to make sure that we're not only educating people about the origins of Stonewall and how many Black and brown, queer, and trans people were really at the forefront of that movement, but also the folks that are still doing this work right now. And it's giving us an amazing opportunity to make sure that those voices are being properly elevated in this moment.
I love that. I mean, I think that there's intersectionality in everything we do, right? And that's what you really touch on, and making sure that as we talk about equity, that the Black and brown voices in our LGBT community are elevated as well. So what do you hope in this moment people take out of Pride that's different than in years past?
For me, I think that is actually the most important thing, is understanding how closely that these communities and these fights are together. When we talk about, the Supreme Court win this week, that was directly on the backs of the 1964 Voting Rights Act. And as I told a group of folks who gathered to celebrate in the Castro this week, I said, so you have to understand that this is on the backs of Black people that were lynched, who were beaten on bridges, who lost their lives. And still today, just last week, a Black man was found hung in a tree in Palmdale. A Black man was found hung in a tree in Lancaster. Just yesterday, a Black man was found hung in a tree in Houston. So, we have to remember also at the same time at that Supreme Court decision, they refused to hear a case that would actually have them look deeper into the ways that police are held accountable for unlawful use of force. So we have to my big thing that I'm hoping that we get from this is that we have to continue fighting. One thing that we as a community acknowledged but didn't really do very well when we won the right for same-sex marriage is that there were people who thought, I've won my rights now, I can get married, and they stopped. And, none of us can afford to stop. Even if you are a person who is directly, there has literally been people in social media in this moment who said, I've gotten everything now. I got my right for marriage, and now can't get discriminated in the workplace. So you then have to take your privilege that you have now. You have to fight a little bit harder. You have to march a little bit longer because your Black and brown, queer, and trans family is still not liberated and free. And if we're not free, then nobody's free.
And I love that. And I think it is such a lesson for those of us that are allies or striving to be allies to use that privilege. And it is true, right? All of our freedoms, no matter what they are, what those privileges are on the back of some struggle, right? And someone else's struggle. And so we have to stand alongside one another. And it has been in this moment so inspiring to see the diversity. White and Black and brown people coming together in our streets in huge numbers, in small cities like I represent, that I don't think anybody would have expected to have, thousands of people showing up, and they're showing up. And so keep it up. And I love that message because it's not over. We're so
not
far
over. Still fighting.
Yeah. So thank you. And yes, although it was a great victory on Monday, we have a lot more victories to win for sure. So thank you for that. And so Amy, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Livermore. So you had your first Pride event last year, which was awesome. And can you talk a little bit about how that came to be and what's happening in Livermore?
Sure, thank you. So last year, my partner and I have lived here in Livermore for a few years now, and we were realizing we both work in San Francisco but live out here, and I work remotely. But we were realizing we were having a hard time finding people like us that we could just, socialize with, have, a life with, have friends and activities or whatnot. And so we just decided, why don't we just put some flyers up and see if anyone wants to maybe make a picnic or some sort of a Pride celebration, and keep it really low key because we're all really busy with work and all our lives, right?
Alert, there was nothing low key about the amazing Livermore Pride. I was there. Go on.
There was not. What happened was that right away from that first meeting, we had about 20 people show up, everyone so excited that, anyone was talking about this or doing this here in Livermore. And we just had this really great core group of organizers that decided, what, we're gonna go big instead of go home. And we ended up having a festival with close to 3,000 people in October. We chose October because it's LGBTQ History Month, and also because it's a lot cooler out here in October than it is in June for Pride Month. One of the things I was really proud about, not just about how much we worked with our local civil servants, but also so many groups, nonprofits, religious organizations, and local businesses throughout our community that really came together to support us and make it as awesome as it was. And we really just kept our core values at the center of it. So we know that Livermore is quite unique in the Bay Area. I like to call it Deep East Bay because we're about as far out as you can go. But it's just such a great mix of folks out here, and it's a very family-oriented community. So we wanted to have something that was truly, we weren't trying to compete with San Francisco Pride. I love San Francisco Pride, and I've gone the last few years. But we can't compete with that, nor do we really want to. So we wanted to make something truly Livermore. And we had a very family-oriented event. We had just such a great, our whole lawn covered with picnic blankets, live music, comedians, drag queen story time, and then some really great speeches from some local civil servants as well. So we were so proud that that was the first time the Pride flag flew over the Livermore City Hall. And we also have, I should actually take it off the wall here, a proclamation by the city of Livermore supporting a culture of welcome, inclusion, and respect. And that was all thanks to the work that we did with the city. So that's the high level, but I think, everyone's really, I think we can all relate that everyone's really sad about what's going on in the world right now. And some of the fallout of that is that most prides that are in real life have been canceled. So we're still working really hard to bring that that kind of inclusion and community together for our constituents here locally.
It was, I have to say, there were a couple highlights for me, but one was all the youth. You had a really young crowd, and it was so beautiful to see, and many there with their parents, which was so fun. There was a big P flag presence, and just seeing the families come together to celebrate, their children is something I love to see, because obviously we grew up in a time where that wasn't as common. And so seeing that come together is just so beautiful. But then also you had a preacher there who was blessing people. Do you remember that? A reverend? And I loved it, because I feel like one of the things that really comes to head with this is religion. And I have a sister who happens to be in a same-sex marriage who is also a rabbi, and she's married to a rabbi. And you can be very religious and LGBTQ, and I think making sure that that message is out there as well is really critical, that the two are not in contradiction. They are very much can be the same, and I really enjoyed that. So now Kiku from the Rainbow Community Center, which is a fantastic resource for LGBTQ people in Contra Costa County. I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about what Rainbow Community Center does and how it continues to serve the community during COVID-19.
Yes, and I'm so happy to be in conversation with you all. With Rainbow Community Center, which we are located in Concord, and we do service the whole county, we have a myriad of services, and we were so fortunate to be able to pivot early on in mid-March when we needed to go virtual. So we did a lot of learning quickly on platforms, and we're excited to have been already now for over pretty close to 3 months being able to offer our mental health services and do telehealth online. So our robust clinical department with psychotherapy, anywhere from family, couples to individuals, including young people. We have a team of clinicians that have a full caseload, and they've been meeting with folks online, and that has been very helpful. And another beautiful thing about being online is that it's really de-siloed a lot of the work, and it's made it more accessible. So on-roading with our youth programs all moving to be virtual, we've had young people from Gender and Sexualities Alliances up in Seattle joining youth programs with us, and having, again, the intersection and the different conversations of what's happening in their communities, and just being able to not be so isolated, to meet folks that they normally wouldn't meet. That has been really a huge win in that sense. We also are holding virtual trainings. We were doing in-person trainings before shelter in place, and similarly, we just had a training this morning where we had folks from St. Paul, Minnesota. We had folks from LA. We had folks from Reno, Nevada, all joining us here in the Bay Area to have conversations about sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So alongside with that, we have a very engaged elder program, our senior program. And as you can imagine, that alongside of our food pantry program, we had to really be creative about how are we gonna be able to support our most vulnerable populations. The folks that are older, the folks that are immunocompromised within our community, everything from HIV plus statuses to cancer to a myriad of immunocompromised situations for our folks. So we've had to do a lot of movement and changing our program, and we now call it a supply train. And we have a team of volunteers that goes out in the community, and we are servicing over 100 of our elders that have been part of community previously and added new folks. So being able to stop by and be at their doorstep and be able to broker anything from prescription pickups to refills to grocery getting, to being able to have friendly visitor conversations and connect on case management and really learn what the needs are. Again, most compromised populations being in healthcare facilities, so many stigmas, it pushes a lot of people back into the closet. So hand in hand with our training, we know how important it is to educate a lot of our folks who are working with our community. And also looking at our houseless transitional youth program. As you can imagine, being homeless, not having a house to be in, especially in this time, that is not a program that we can pivot virtually. So we have an amazing housing director that has been working one-on-one with a lot of our clients to be able to get them into safe spaces and places that they don't have to worry about what's the next thing. And they can focus on wellness. They can focus on looking for work in different ways and employment, especially in this time, extra difficult. So we are doing a lot of services that we already were doing in a more creative way and being able to meet the needs of the highest acuity clients, our folks in community that are shoved further again into the closet. And when we think about Pride and knowing that it's this month, a lot of sadness, knowing that we were gearing up, we were just getting ready to start doing planning of all of our supporters and our events. And so I'm really excited, Amy, that maybe there can be some synergy. I know we're in different counties, but I think that that's what it's about. We're binding and connecting in different ways and in new ways that I think will continue to support our community beyond being sheltered in place and the pandemic. So I'm really proud of the work that our staff are doing. I have 23 folks that have been working tirelessly, trying to figure out when day and night shift, continuing to do the work. And yeah, I'm just very deeply proud of our community and our staff that have been continuing to lead the charge. We know that we are centering in our vision moving forward to be able to serve our people of color, particularly our Black folks and community. We know we're not doing the best job reaching them. So in terms of connecting East and West County, that is a move that we're doing to be more expansive and to go beyond being inclusive in our programming and to build programs, build a presence that we know that folks believe that they belong to, they can be affirmed and be represented.
Well, thank you for that. I often, you hear the cliche, if you will, that we're going to get through this together, but it's so true, right? None of us could do this alone, and all of the work you're doing for our community members is so critical to making sure we get through this safely and with wellness, right? Both physical and mental wellness. So one question I have for you is, one of the things we hear a lot is how difficult it is for some of our LGBTQ community members who are now isolated, right? I mean, people, as you mentioned, are more isolated than they are in their life before COVID because they can't go out and do the things that we were all doing before. And do you have any resources if someone is feeling like they're not in a supportive setting or they're feeling isolated? Can you talk a little bit about that specifically?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that because I mentioned the highest need communities, the most at risk, and starting with our elders, our seniors in community. We are in connection with a lot of providers in our county, and we're having weekly calls and talking about what are the best ways that we can be showing up and meeting where they're at. And so we've been mobilizing a lot with being able to have food accessible at various locations, and again, educating folks so the stigmas aren't first and foremost showing up around identities, and because they're less likely to ask for help. So there are resources like SAGE, which are for our elders, that has been going for many decades and is a national resource. And they have been so great in terms of just being able to offer programming and call-ins. And there are a lot of organizations like that that are showing up. For our young people, our staff that serve our youth and increasing our volunteers around that and being able to have more of a presence and to be able to deputize and have leadership roles and engage them, as Carolyn was mentioning earlier, with the gatherings, the protests, the uprising, the voices. We find that that has been a really strong way that our young people are able to have visibility and be out, of course, being protected and staying safe. So we are doing rainbow masks, and that's important for visibility, especially for Pride. And that's something that we are exchanging for donations. And we have a really beautiful small business that has been making these for us. So, I would just say that there's a lot of ways to show up for our youth and our elders and all along intergenerationally. And it has to do with matching people. So we definitely have mentors that meet with our community members. And we are also going to be launching a new program through our clinical department where we are specifically going to be reaching out to Black folks who are LGBTQI identified to be able to have low to no cost telehealth services. We know how important it is to talk during this time, to be able to express, to be able to be seen. So again, having Zoom and platforms like that make that so different for our folks' experiences, knowing that we can't be gathering right now in Todos Santos Park and having our Pride. It can be had in so many ways. So we're very prolific on Facebook and our social media as well, with just really highlighting LGBTQI folks. They're not as well as known, and people that people can actually be in touch with and connect and have relationship.
Well, thank you so much. It's so helpful, and all the great work you're doing. And that mask is amazing. It is our new way of expressing ourselves. So we're going to show our pride with our masks now. So we've talked a little bit about how our events are not happening in person this year because it's not safe. Any virtual events you guys know about that people should attend?
San Francisco Pride is programming 13 hours of virtual Pride. Now, technically, Trans March SF will be on our feed on Friday, June the 26th. And then San Francisco Pride takes over our feed on Saturday, June the 27th at 1 p.m. And the virtual Pride, you can find it on sfpride.org, which will take you to different various streaming partners, most of which will be on Twitch, but some which will be on YouTube as well. So we'll have performers and speakers and DJs. Our headliner on Saturday night will be the Queen of Bounce from New Orleans, Big Frida. I don't know if she's going to be in New Orleans or where she will be, but she will be live streaming, I believe, at 8 p.m. Saturday night. And then we'll pick up again on Sunday at 2 p.m. from 2 to 7. Also be doing 3 hours of programming on KPIX Channel 5 during the slot that would normally be the Pride Parade. So, anyone who still wants to dance and party, there are still ways to do it virtually. Now that our cities are opening up just a little bit, we are saying, hey, find what are they calling a social distancing bubble of friends and hang out with them to dance with. So that's what we'll be doing. And then we also have our Lavender Talk series that we've been doing with the Commonwealth Club every other Thursday. And what we're going to be doing is going all the way into June and July and August. So since we can't have a whole big celebration, we are going to continue doing smaller events and celebrations throughout the summer.
But I'm doing Saturday night.
Watching Big Frida.
Yes! We will always celebrate virtually. I'll find my bubble.
Yes, right.
Amazing. So I just want to ask each of you to close with a message to my assembly district and everybody who's watching. Give them a message for Pride. Let's send them off with something.
Representation matters, and I think allyship, as you mentioned earlier, that is so important. So as much as we can be visible in a time where we're in shelter, it makes that much difference. The rainbow flag's out, the ability to have things that we're wearing that can be seen on our chests, affirming things. Our young people need it. All of our community members need it. And we do have a drag time story hour tomorrow for Concord Live with our staff/resident drag queen, Bella Adama. So free, similar to Carolyn, leading up to the fall. It's our 25-year anniversary for the center. So I know that's a lot more than what you asked in terms of a message, but I wanted to make sure that we all know that we're connected here. And I think that's the message. We are connected.
I'd love to add to what Kiku said, that, this is just as an important time as ever, even though we're, in our county, we're still sheltering in place. We still need to stand up when injustices do occur, and we need to be visible. And the, queer movement is very closely, completely intrinsically linked with the racial justice movement. And, you know, we have to stand up for these things together. So, you know, you may have seen what's going on with the Livermore Farmers Market. You know, that was something where we were so supported by our community who said, no, this is not okay. Enough is enough. And we're so thrilled to be moving forward really generatively with our community in all of those ways. And Livermore is just such an amazing place to live. So I love that we just came together around that. And then I have to plug our event that's also on June 28th. So come check out livermorepride.org. We're going to have probably about only an hour, not 13 hours, of a Pride party. We'll have speakers, we'll have performers. We're gonna do a call out for folks to send in their videos. So all about bringing people together during this time, because, you know, even though we're physically distant, we're still very connected. And part of it will be a fundraiser. Well, not part of it. It will be a fundraiser for the Marsha P. Johnson Institute. So we're really excited because, you know, right now with our Pride Festival closed, we thought that was the best way that we could give back to our community too.
I love that. And I do want to give a shout out to Livermore for standing together in this moment when we had a difficult moment at the farmers market and watching the community come out. And we are learning we aren't going to be silent, right? And I think it's so critical, both for those affected and for allies, to speak up when something happens. And we continue to see it, and I hope it will continue. Carolyn, your message to send us off.
My message all month has been, you know, pride is a defense of Black bodies. You know, I had the opportunity to do a panel discussion with Mayor London Breed and several African-American leaders in the LGBTQ community, which you can still find on her Facebook page and on her YouTube page, and where we talked about the importance of elevating our Black LGBTQ community in this moment. So just reminding us all that, you know, like Amy said, these struggles are definitely connected. You know, liberation is liberation for one, is liberation for all. None of us are free until any of us are free. And, you know, I need to be able to go to the Livermore outlets and buy my shoes from the Nike outlet without you judging me. So let's all, I'm losing my mind. So let's all get together and make sure that we are elevating all of our voices and make sure that we're all feeling supported all across our 9 counties of the Bay Area.
Thank you for that. And I love that message because it is, you know, it all, right? When we treat one person with respect, we treat everyone with respect. So I think that's so critical. So thank you so much, Amy, Carolyn, and Kiku, for joining me today. This was such a fun conversation, and I hope everyone listening enjoys it as much as I did. But you really are making our community a better place and making our LGBT community feel supported and lift up their voices. And we want that message to be loud and clear, you know, that we support all members of our LGBT community, and especially right now, the Black members of our community who are suffering in many ways. So thank you all for being here. You know, I look forward to continuing this conversation, for joining you all for your dancing and your celebrations, and making sure that we celebrate Pride together, not just in June, but all year, because really it is worthy of being celebrated every day. So thank you guys, so fun.